As far as techniques and abilities go in Bleach, Shunko is a pretty unique one, and it's one that we see used very sparingly throughout the canon manga. Essentially a very high-level and advanced hand-to-hand combat technique, the user of Shunko combines Kido with Hakuda to create a combination technique that is vastly more powerful than anything they could achieve simply using their body alone. So basically they just drive Kido into their arms and legs, and it essentially infuses all of their physical attacks with that power. Now what's really cool is, like I said, this is used very sparingly throughout the series, and in fact we only actually see 3 practitioners of Shunko throughout the manga itself: Yoruichi, Soifon, and Yushiro. And what I really liked about this was the way Kubo gave each of these individual users a slightly different elemental twist to their Shunko capabilities, which is not something I was ever expecting. But Yoruichi uses lightning, Soifon uses wind, and Yushiro uses fire. However, the one we're going to be focusing on in this video is Yoruichi, the main practitioner of Shunko throughout the series, and the inventor of the technique itself, as she revealed to Soifon during their climactic battle in the Soul Society arc. And what's so interesting about Yoruichi is that she's taken Shunko to such an extreme degree that we see her using a completely new form in the Thousand Year Blood War arc that seems to stem from Shunko, but honestly brings with it a ton of new questions. Before we begin, however, guys, if you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure to do that now. You're in the perfect place for Bleach content like this every single week. Also, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I really do appreciate the support, and it helps the video get out to more Bleach fans like yourselves and facilitate an awesome discussion. And if you do want to take that support for me another step further, the channel has a Patreon now where you can support me for as little as $1 a month. It all really helps, and you can get early access to videos just like this one as well. And as always, with every video, I want to say a massive shout out to everyone who is supporting me on Patreon so far. I really appreciate it, and thank you so much. So when it comes to Yoruichi, obviously she is a very unique character among the Bleach cast for a number of reasons. Primarily the fact that she is a captain-level Shinigami who never uses her Zanpakuto. Instead, she always favours Hakuda combat. I've done an entire character analysis on Yoruichi, which you can obviously check out, but in this one we're really going to be focusing and doubling down on her Shunko abilities. In particular, the very strange ability of Shunryu Kokubyo Senki that she uses in the final battle she has against Askin Naklavar. Now, she is the self-proclaimed inventor of Shunko. As we see way back, she's completed her Lightning Shunko a long time ago, although she still struggles to use it completely flawlessly. Specifically, during her battle with Askin, we see just how capable she actually is with this ability, and in my opinion, Kubo shows us a couple of different stages to this power that I personally I think are supposed to reflect Shikai and Bankai, although obviously not quite so literally. Anyway, for a bit of context surrounding Yoruichi's powers and her application of Shunko, when she uses this ability, like I said, for her it takes the form of lightning. They seem to be like these huge lightning wings that burst out of her shoulders, and they strike down in that area, and overall just have a really awesome look to them. She uses Shunko twice prior to the Askin fight in the canon manga, obviously against Soifon, although that's incredibly brief, basically just to prove to her that she was able to do it first, and is far superior with it. And then she uses it against Aizen in the Fate Karakura Town battle in what I think is a pretty unique application of this power. I'm pretty sure she just activates it momentarily to enhance her punch, and that allows her to break sort of the first outermost layer of Aizen's cocoon, as it were, at the time. I remember honestly thinking that moment was really cool back in the day, how she just triggers it for a split second, it seems, and you see it shoot out the back, almost of like her elbow, I think, in that particular scene, because she's obviously wearing that anti-Hiero armor at the point, so you sort of see it fill up with lightning and burst out the back as she punches Aizen square in the chest, and that was honestly a really cool moment. But actually, when you think about it, when you take just the canon manga into account, she doesn't really use and showcase Shunko until that battle with Askin in Varvelt. So basically, as soon as the battle begins, she activates Shunko, she gets those massive lightning wings that seem to come down from the sky, although obviously they're coming off of her, but it's a cool little visual trick, I think. And this is really the first time we've seen Shunko being depicted properly as wings. Now, obviously, you don't really get to see a whole lot of it in the Soul Society battle between her and Soifon. Then Soifon uses it again against BG9. And again, it kind of appears like massive butterfly wings when she uses it the first time, but then it kind of just transitions into being this whirlwind around her arm, although it does also look awesome, to be fair. But here, Kubo's really just flat out drawing it as a pair of wings, and he'll do the same thing with Yushiro later as well. There's an amazing bit of choreography here where Askin fires a pair of arrows at Yoruichi. She just grabs one of them, spins around and throws it straight back in his chest, which is a wonderful moment that will hopefully look awesome in the anime. But then she activates what seems to be the first stage of her Shunko Raijin Senkei. And in this form, she doesn't really change too much. She brings her arms around her in like this kind of arc. And in reflection of that, she gains this kind of connected arc of elemental orbs of lightning behind her, essentially, which take the form of, I believe, Raijin's drums. Raijin being a god of lightning and thunder and storms in Japanese mythology and the Shinto religion. And Raijin's drums are something that have been depicted in fiction numerous times. It's not unique to Bleach, but I've seen plenty of characters have that kind of symbolism behind them before, and it suits Yoruichi really well, and she looks awesome as well. Also, when she activates this form, some of her hair stands up on end to kind of look like cat ears, which is actually a nice little piece of foreshadowing for what was to come a couple of chapters down the line. But basically, when she uses his ability, she, like I said, brings her arms around her, and it basically creates a massive bolt of lightning that smashes down upon Askin. So this is all well and good, and it's pretty awesome seeing Yoruichi actually controlling lightning like some kind of genuine goddess. That's honestly really, really cool. And again, something else I just can't wait to see animated. She has a wicked look on her face when she does it as well. She looks awesome. That panel, or essentially I think it's a whole page even, of her bringing down her hand and screaming, Raijin Senkei as Askin is like being electrified. I love that. That's one of my favourite battle panels, I think, in general. I just think it has so much energy to it. But what we're really here to talk about is the second and presumably final form of Yoruichi's Shunko prowess, which is quite a mouthful, but it's Shunko Raijin Senkei Shunryo Kokubyo Senki. For ease of use, basically she turns into a lightning cat. Before we continue, I just want to bring up a small point. So, Shunko is a fusion of Hakuda and Kido. To this end, it's not surprising that the only people that seem to use it are Hakuda experts. Like we see, even Yushiro Shihoin is already quite proficient with Shunko, creating these fiery wings and hitting Askin with the force of a bomb, essentially. But I kind of wonder, to be able to use Shunko, you presumably have to have a pretty high level of Kido competency as well. And so clearly by combining the two, you can really use it. But I wonder if just a Kido user could use Shunko at all, or if they would just create the kind of winged effect, but obviously not be able to competently fight at close quarters. I'm just trying to imagine someone like Hachi using Shunko and it looking completely ridiculous because he can't actually really land a punch. But it's just something to think about, because obviously you have to have a decent, you would think, level of Kido knowledge to be able to use it. And anyway, talking about Yoruichi's final form, it seems to be a combination of that Kido prowess, but also her feline transformation from much earlier in the story. And so we can't talk about Yoruichi's final form without talking about her cat transformation, because it's pretty... I feel like we kind of forgot how important it was, because by the time you're at this fight, you're so far removed from the Soul Society arc. But it was a major part of her character. It defined her entire character for the vast majority of the Soul Society arc. I thought she was a man for ages, because I was introduced to Bleach through the anime. And I thought Yoruichi was probably going to be a guy, because the cat had a really, really deep voice. And so that defined her character for a long time, and it's, I don't think, ever really explained how or why she can do this. Transforming fully into a cat to the point where it creates a pretty impressive disguise seems to be a pretty big deal to me that's just never really addressed. Maybe it's addressed in the supplementary material. If it is, I don't really remember. The only can't fear your own world thing, I think Yoruichi is, really kind of revelatory, is her talking about her Zanpakuto toe, which we'll get into a bit later. But yeah, so... And the cat thing is funny because it is actually brought up again in the 1,000-Year Blood War arc. Yoruichi herself mentions that she can still do that transformation, which is kind of neat because I think many of us thought Kubo just kind of forgot about it. And then also when Ichigo and his friends are trying to imagine one of Yoruichi's family members, they have a comedic moment where they imagine it as a cat. And Yoruichi's like, I'm not a literal cat. But, they could be forgiven for thinking that, because why can she do that? Is she a member of the Beast Realm clan, like Komamura? Again, like if you watched the last video I literally put out, we spoke briefly about Yu Yayahara, the new vice captain of Squad 8. And there are some similarities here, for sure. Yu seemingly liking to just use hand-to-hand combat mostly. The apparition of the bear behind her, again, giving her this kind of feral, I guess, moveset is the right word, but that's kind of similar to Yoruichi, although Yu hasn't actually showcased actually transforming into a bear. But regardless, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but I do think that the cat transformation is obviously key to this final transformation, but it's so weird that we never really know how it works. And I say that because this feline transformation is clearly intrinsically a big part of who Yoruichi actually is. The fact that this final Shunko form seems completely linked to that. When she activates this transformation, or as we'll get into, has the transformation activated for her, she undergoes a change that changes some of her body. Her hair now stands up completely like electrified cat ears, as it did in Raijin Senkei, but also now lightning seems to actively course through her hair, down her ponytail, and out and off of her body. She seems to be breathing lightning at certain points as well, and some of these comparisons, in my opinion at least, are very similar to Yamamoto's West ability in Bankai, when he was breathing fire, when fire, or Reiatsu, shaped, disguised as fire, essentially, was ebbing off of his body. Very similar here. In many ways, it looks like Yoruichi has become lightning. But now she has cat paws for her feet, her hands have become clawed, lightning has enveloped her arms and legs to create essentially long gloves and boots. She now also seems to be wearing a lightning bikini as well, and just to top things off, she has a tail. So here's my gambit, I guess. I'm going to kind of lay it down. What does this form actually do? I'm not really sure, because it's only showcased for an extremely short amount of time, which is not Yoruichi's fault. But it's kind of weird to think about when you consider the context it's being used in. Yoruichi is already essentially the fastest character in the series, so does this form make her even more nimble? Does she move even faster than she did before? She certainly seems to spring off of the floor and go absolutely flying when she first uses it, so that could certainly be an element of it. Does this new form infuse all of her physical attacks with lightning? Well, it certainly seems so, because when she strikes Askin at one point, he gets literally blasted by lightning. But I feel like that is kind of similar to what Shunko did anyway. It certainly seems to me, at least, that this form was essentially contrived just to counter Askin's death dealing, because the only really unique aspect of this ability is the fact that it makes her fickle and moody like a cat, and because of that, it changes her Reiatsu exponentially. It changes apparently 48 times a second, which is a totally arbitrary number. And in my opinion, it seems to really be the only justification for this power to literally defeat the opponent she is up against, which is Askin, who has to be beaten in this way. Now, I'm not saying this form is useless, because quite clearly she becomes quite a force of nature, but then what I mean is Yoruichi already kind of was before. And I do feel like, as much as I enjoyed this fight, there is some strangeness to it, that Kubo kind of arrives at certain points that don't feel completely natural, in my opinion. As much as I like Askin, I have a really hard time believing he managed to land a hit on Yoruichi with one of his gift balls that completely wiped her out. Yoruichi, at that point in the fight, being fit as a fiddle and, should never have been hit by anything he can do. Obviously, Askin is very capable as well, but Yoruichi's not like Grimjo. She's not just going to smack one of the attacks out of the way and get affected by it, but then maybe she did. We never saw it, so we'll never know. All we know is that she did somehow get hit by it, and that obviously forced her hand for the rest of the fight as to how she would perform. So I'm not saying the form is worthless, because quite clearly she is very, very capable as a fighter, but then at the same time, it's not like she went into this form to escape Askin's poison. That already happened because Kisuke injected her with a drug. She was able to move around and fight with Raijin Senkei again despite this. Now, she was still physically weakened by Askin's poison, even though Kisuke had got her up and moving again. Askin was able to land a punch on her this time because she had now slowed down. So I'm kind of assuming at the end of all that, the reason for this transformation is to really jazz her up, basically, and kind of, I guess, get her back to full power again, because after Kisuke's drug that staved off the poison a bit, she was still nowhere near 100%, and it was enough for Askin to be able to get the drop on her, so she had to go in this form to kind of not only keep up with him, but continue to absolutely dominate him. Now, I have to be honest, I have a ton of questions regarding this form. Where did it come from? Is it the natural end point of her Shunko training? If so, why is it a form that she absolutely hates? How does that really work? That's something that does kind of confuse me. If it was something to do with her Zanpakuto, then I could maybe see her not liking that, because that feels to me like something she wouldn't have real control over. But we can assume that this potentially has nothing to do with her Zanpakuto. This is just an external ability, and yet she hates it. She calls it undignified, half-cocked. She doesn't like that form at all, and she would never transform into it of her own will. The whole thing is just really weird, and I think we needed more explanation, because if you go back and read this fight, this form is like been and gone in about a chapter. It's literally about a chapter. And I think basically Kubo just wanted to give Yoruichi something really awesome before essentially seeing her on her way, which I think is totally fair. And I think the fans, wanted to see something really cool from her. I just think that this begs a lot of questions, this form. Like, how did she get to this place? How did she train to have an ability that you have to assume she had some control over, because it's not her Zanpakuto, and then she hates it? It's just really, really weird, and it all comes down to, where does this cat form come from? I think that's the crux. I appreciate I'm probably looking into this way too much, considering how little time this thing actually spends in the manga, but there are, again, just more questions still. Why can Kisuke control it? Why is he able to remotely activate it and bypass Yoruichi herself? How does that work? The whole thing about pulling off the paper, when he says, he shows her a piece of paper and it says, when I peel this off, you'll transform. How does that work? Is that actually transforming her, or has he done something prior to that we haven't seen that's making her change? I have literally no idea. And so when it comes to my personal opinion about this ability, I don't really know where I stand with it, because I do think that Yoruichi deserved to have kind of her moment in the sun, especially with the end of the manga rapidly approaching, and it was cool that, if we were really never going to see her Zanpakuto, that she got some kind of transformation. And on that sense, it makes total sense to combine two of her most recognisable aspects, the fact that she had a cat transformation and the fact that she has a lot of lightning, basically, so you turn her into a lightning cat. At the same time, when the form is used in the way it is, with Kisuke forcing it upon her, she doesn't actually want to use this ability, and it transforms her into essentially a mindless cat. It doesn't sit right with me. Removing Yoruichi's agency feels like a real shame, because this character has always been depicted as incredibly capable, very strong, very experienced. She's quite an old captain at the end of the day. She's very capable of duking it out with the absolute best of them. Outside of the contrived Reiatsu changing ability that was suitable only for Askin, and maybe making her a bit more mobile and kind of allowing her to, I guess, keep up with him again and get back into the fight for a short while, I can't really see what it actually did. And like I said, I do think this is a bit of a shame, just the way it's handled, particularly because outside of the light novels, this is the very last time we ever see this character in the manga, and she can't speak, she can't understand people anymore, she kind of jumps around, and it's kind of, I guess, cute and funny the first time you see it, but it kind of wears off when you realise that Yoruichi is like gone, and it's just a bit weird. If we get down to brass tacks, a part of me does think that this form just exists for the fan service element. And that's kind of strange to me, because Yoruichi has never really been used in that way. Obviously, she is depicted as being an incredibly attractive character. That's something we know and have known for the entire series, but she's never been explicitly used in a fan servicey way. Almost every other time we've seen her has made logical sense. Her best design is still far and away the Soul Society arc design, where she just looks really cool. But particularly towards the end of the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, Kubo is just full on using her as fan service, and it's definitely a bit of a shame when you consider it is the last time we ever see her, and that lasting impression of the character, in my opinion at least, is virtually unrecognisable from the character we have all come to know and love up until now. In my opinion, and I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this before, probably in the Yoruichi video, but there was a way that you could have done this to really satisfy the fans and give them revelations they actually wanted. Now, I know in Can't For Your Own World it is mentioned that she is stronger without her Zanpakuto. Yeah, okay, I guess that's fair enough. Can't For Your Own World didn't exist when these chapters came out, however. And in my opinion, the powers and stages we see could have easily translated into Zanpakuto abilities, and then we could have satisfied the fans' curiosity about what her Zanpakuto actually is. You could have potentially really heightened the kind of tension, essentially, in the situation by having Yoruichi, a character who never uses her blade, actually use it. Not because she's, weaker with it, which I'm still not entirely sure how that works, but because the situation necessitates it. The Shikai could have been Raijin Senkei, and the Bankai could have been Shunryo Kokubyo Senki. But potentially she even keeps her mind in this form, because it's actually her choosing to use it. I personally would have liked that, but I can kind of see why people don't want her to use a Zanpakuto. That is kind of her thing. But the 1,000-Year Blood War arc up until, well, pretty much the entire way through, has been about kind of breaking these conventions. Kenpachi gets a Shikai because the situation necessitated it, because people were in real trouble. Kisuke is actually on the front lines from the very beginning and actually uses Bankai because the situation necessitated it. And I think it just would have been really cool if Kubo had handled it in that way. But regardless, it's still really neat to see basically what you have to assume is the full gamut of Shunko abilities, and Yoruichi running through all of them in her fight against Askin, and you really do get to see her lightning powers used in really cool and creative ways. But that's it for this video, guys, on Yoruichi's ultimate technique. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this power. I would really love to hear it, because I do have, like I said, a ton of questions about how this thing works, where it came from, how it ended up to be a power that she actually hates, and what you think about having this translated as her Zanpakuto abilities instead. How do you think that would have worked? Let me know in the comments below. I would really love to hear what you think. Alright guys, but like I said, make sure to hit subscribe if you haven't done already, and until next time, I'll catch you later. See ya.